right. Hello, everyone. This is Jessica. I think as more people are coming on here, we are unmuting. So if you can hear me, give a hello. That'd be nice. And then otherwise, you guys can go back on mute until we start. No one can hear me.
Hello from Mike.
Oh, hello, Mike. Thank you. Hopefully everybody else has a good connection too. Okay. We're going to probably stick to our 1 o'clock start time, so we've got a couple minutes until then. Hello? All right, we have a good number of people joining on here. We're just at 1 o'clock. He has been muted right now. I think I can unmute some, or you can mute yourself when I say a quick hello, see if everyone can hear me okay. Maybe Mike can give me, how's my Hannah and Mike? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, Mike Bismeyer's here. Thank you.
Great, great. Yep. Okay. Peggy. Oh, I heard you there, Peggy. Thank you. Awesome. All right. I just need a couple. I'm going to make sure everybody can hear us okay. So what I'm going to do is I'll put you all on mute now. We're going to get started here and kick off with our introduction and some housekeeping, and then get started with Mike. So, good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's flash webinar, Bullying in the School Bus Environment. My name is Jessica, and I'm the Member Services Coordinator here at NSTA. Like I just mentioned, a couple housekeeping items. So to reduce the background noise, please keep yourself on mute, or until you're planning to ask a question, we will unmute you at designated times. You'll notice on the bottom right hand of your screen for the GoToWebinar, what I call the command center, you'll have the option to download two handouts that have been uploaded for today's webinar. These documents will also be distributed after the webinar. With that being said, we're excited to be joined by today's presenter, Mike Bismeyer. Mike moved to Abbotsford in 1991 from Langley, British Columbia. Mike graduated from Mission Senior Secondary in 1987 and proceeded to work for Canada Safeway for 21 years. Moving into a sales position at SEON Design in 2006, a company that manufactures and sells surveillance cameras within the transportation industry, Mike proceeded to quickly move into a sales management leadership role and eventually to his current position as Northeast Video Sales in a company that was a natural fit. Passionate about helping people, promoting safety products and measures, Mike was an integral part of the inception of the United to End Bullying, UEB initiative. The company was founded in 2013. Mike has continued to be a speaker and passionate advocate, speaking on behalf of the company at schools and conferences throughout North America. And in his spare time, Mike's an avid runner and an 80s music aficionado. With that being said, I'd like to hand off the webinar to my friend, Mike.
Well, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Very nice introduction. I'm not sure who wrote that for you, but I would love a copy of it. So that's great. Thank you very much. I would like to start by thanking everyone for attending. Good afternoon, as was noted, and for anyone on the West Coast, where I am actually located myself, good morning to you. And would just like to say, looking forward to engaging with you all today. Going to run through a WebEx here that we've sort of designed to, create awareness and help, hopefully, to start an end to bullying, which, is obviously a very raw subject for many of us. So we'll go through multiple things. There'll be some question time. I'm sure you guys will want some additional resources, et cetera, and we'll cover all that as we sort of go through the webinar. So as was noted, I work for SEON, who's part of the Safe Fleet family. A bunch of different companies all somehow evolved in safety products in the transportation verticals, both school bus, public transit, and then many other verticals, emergency vehicles, heavy duty machinery, et cetera. So it's a pleasure to be on board. I come from the video sort of entity, which is SEON, which was one of the first companies under the sort of Safe Fleet umbrella. We were purchased as their video vendor along with some of the products they had. Our company itself started way back in 1999. I joined in 2008, and the United Against Bullying started in 2012, which has been rebranded as United to End Bullying. So a little bit of history there. And also on the line from our team in a support role today is Teresa Lynn, who's our program sort of ambassador and manager. We have a United to End coordinator at each of our 12 business entities, and Teresa manages the sort of messaging and all the great programs that we have, and does a tirelessly amount of work in the background. It's been a pleasure to work alongside her too. So I'll go into sort of what we're going to cover today. We're going to go through some statistics. We'll talk a bit about sort of bullying, where it is, the unfortunate problem that it is. We'll talk about, some signs of how do we recognize it, how do we intervene, de-escalation techniques, talking about setting a culture to prevent bullying in the future. What does and doesn't work. We'll talk a bit about the use of technology in different aids to sort of, if not reduce bullying, but at least help investigate how it started. And then we'll talk about some resources as well that are available for many different entities that, both through our website and then some of the external ones that we enjoy partnerships with as well. So, and I'll talk a little bit about myself as we move through, but I've been with SEON for 10 years. This program was started as a sort of a corporate culture, making a difference in our community in 2012, which we'll talk a bit about as we move through and how I got involved in that. So first we're going to start with some stats and sort of, some background. And unfortunately, we all have an understanding of what may or may not be bullying and sort of our own perception. But, 3.2 million kids report being victims of bullying of some sort every year. It continues to grow. It's an epidemic in both Canada and the U.S., so throughout North America. And we communicate with both Canada and the U.S. with sort of our business developments. So it continues to spread. It's everywhere. That's unfortunate. 6 out of 10 teenagers, students say that they witness bullying at least once a day in the schools. And it's prevalent. The unfortunate part of that is, 80% of the students who witness bullying say they're against it, but only about 10% of kids ever sort of step up to say something about it with fear of being a target themselves. So again, it's that perception of don't want to be the one to stand out against it, but they do feel bad about it and understand that it's a wrong culture. And we need to change that perception and empower kids to to do some things about it. And you take it to the next extreme: 160,000 kids a year stay home from school every day, and that's hard to comprehend too, because students are our future. They're going to move into roles and hopefully one day be great leaders. But when the education and their safe space of education is affected, it affects us all. So it does have deep ramifications for sure. And then obviously, the next level is people actually drop out of school. And we have kids that don't want to go to school because of this, and it becomes so prevalent or bad that they consider changing school districts or not attending at all. And again, it has a huge ramification on both our future, but the future of those youth involved too. It can be a life-altering event if they stay away from school and stay away from the education path, because typically other things that may not be positive would continue to happen in that cycle. And then two to 9 kids a year are more 2 to 9 times more likely to attempt suicide. 4,400 deaths a year are attributed to students. It's the third leading cause of death among young people. Again, an epidemic which we need to stop. It's not getting better. And another interesting stat is that for every young person that does commit suicide, there's about another 100 that attempt it. So those facts are staggering as well, which is, the bullying, it festers and it gets a lot worse. There's been a lot of awareness, for LGBT youth over the last few years, which is fantastic. But of course, sexual orientation is another target of bullying. And, 9 out of 10 folks that have, a different sexual orientation that would be quote unquote the status quo, also become victims of bullying. It's been another huge target. So again, awareness of those sorts of things. And then sadly, 3 or 4 school shootings, which again are prevalent, continue to happen every year, are somehow linked to some sort of bullying in the background or leading up to that event. So it's a huge problem, and we really need to sort of do what we can daily to try and either counteract or create a positive environment that could change the narrative for sure. So how do we do that? Well, the buck or the bus in this instance stops here. Obviously, this is sort of aimed at some school administrators here and the bus drivers, and the school buses being the extension of the school. School buses are ranked the number 2 place for bullying, outside only to the playground at the school. So, there's a unique opportunity here for drivers to start a culture change, to have a much more sort of intimate knowledge of schools, kids, and what's going on, just based on that they get that small segment that attends their bus every day. So there's a unique opportunity here to make a difference. And, we expect a lot of our drivers in terms of, getting our kids to and from school safely every day with all the distractions that are on, but they do have an opportunity to make a difference in their lives and a huge impact too. And we'll talk about some of those. So this is a quick video. Sort of really it's meant to talk about how one person can start a change. It's really just a message that was a YouTube video that was posted that got a lot of hits, and I'm gonna let this play and it sort of speaks for itself. There is some volume, hopefully you can hear it, but I'll let this play through for a minute. Thanks for that. That's just a simple reminder that it takes one person to change the perspective or the narrative on what they see, and always remembering that sort of doing nothing or not mentioning it is the wrong response, and we'll mention that a few times as well. So how did we even get involved in this, and how did I become involved in this on behalf of the company? Well, sadly in 2012, probably one of the most infamous bullying cases that we're all sort of aware of. Amanda Todd posted a video on YouTube with a bunch of placard cards talking about where her life had taken to her, and that she was feeling sort of hopeless from the whole bullying and the sort of cyberbullying that she was a victim of, and couldn't shake it. And unfortunately, in October of 2012, she did commit suicide, and it struck us very personally. Her home where she committed suicide in was in the same community where our SEON office was, Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. And, it touched a lot of people for sure. And I remember us sitting around as a corporation. There was 3 or 4 of us in a room, very shortly after this, talking about how tragic this was, and is there something we could do to make a difference? And, we sort of thought, hey, we've got an outlet here where we're connected to the schools, by products that we sell, and by being involved in great organizations such as NSTA and NASDIPs and all different school bus organizations, and even transit for that matter. So we thought maybe we could do something. So in that same year, we decided to create, we got buy-in from our then president, Terry Akiyama, who's a huge supporter of this endeavor when we first started. And, we got together with him, and he agreed to donate $1 from every system that the sales team sold that year. And we would create this pool of money and start with a coloring contest to see how this took off. And we still joke to this day, it was the little contest that could. And the first year we raised about $25,000 that we gave away on different various checks and grants for schools that were doing different things, that entered our contest and won money to continue spreading the word of anti-bullying, kindness, and different initiatives in that matter. And it's grown. We've done a tremendous job. Very proud of it. We can do a lot better. We have amazing people that are involved in this. It's now gone sort of global within our organization. So all 12 of our business units have an ambassador, whom, as I mentioned earlier, Teresa sort of manages the content and the messaging. We now have a grant program that was actually just released for this year last week. So it's something that you guys can go onto our website after this and pull down the information. But we do a grant program where teachers and students and schools can get involved, and they can write business cases on what they would do to spend money if they won some of the money to continue to create these initiatives and awareness within the schools. It's been a fantastic program. Our corporate culture has changed very positively with this too. It's something that's very personal to all of us. As I said, we all have some sort of story that we either know of, we're part of, or know someone that was part of in terms of the sort of bullying aspect. So, it's been a great program, and that's why we're here today. So we'll move on. And unfortunately, it's worse every year, right? I mean, there's so many things now. There's the cyber, there's video, there's so many things, but kids and bullying, regardless of the means, when they feel hopeless, they feel hopeless. And this is just a quick slide of, some folks that I typically reference on different presentations I do that have all tragically committed suicide because they felt they had no other way out. And it's meant to leave an impact, but it's also meant to not forget a lot of these great people. The girl that's third from the right, Dawn Marie Wesley, was one that meant a lot to me too. I mean, she was in the same school district I was in, and graduated, or never did graduate. She took her own life at 10 years old years ago. It was one of the most famous sort of ones in our local community. But it continues to go on. Up on the top right here, I would implore you to look at this tragic case. This gentleman, Seven Bridges, just took his own life January 19th of this year. So, about 2.5 weeks ago, 10 years old. So due to bullying, and it's a tragic story. And we need to do what we can to, like I say, if we can make a positive impact on someone's life and change one person, it's well worth it. So what is bullying? Well, bullying is obviously defined in many different ways. And again, we all have our ideals of what it is, but typically an unwanted aggressive behavior repeated over in time. There's a perceived power imbalance, and the goal is to hurt, harm, or humiliate at someone else's pleasure, right? I mean, there's a reason the bullies are doing it too, and we won't talk a lot about that today, but typically, physical aggression, verbal, taunting, spreading of rumors, rejecting people, that sort of group mentality of trying to single somebody out for various differences. And then as we talked about, it's grown into the cyberbullying, the sexting. There's all different things now that our kids are sort of prone to in their space. So how do we start, or how do we take action, right? Well, once we understand something is going on, the key is to get involved, right? Again, there's typical ways that the bullies sort of pick on people, or the victims become victims because of. And, intentional really means that, kids can have accidents on playgrounds, kids bump into each other playing sports, and young adults, et cetera. But typically, there's when it's repeated physical or verbal abuse, and the victim will sort of, be susceptible to that continually. It's repetitive. In most cases, the bully obviously picks someone he thinks is not going to stand up to them, or he or she thinks is not going to stand up to them. And in terms of hurtful, it can be in many different ways, right? Physical, emotional, verbal, any way that harms or makes the victim feel less of themselves, and creates pleasure for the person that's doing it. And then definitely an imbalance of power, right? A lot of times the imbalance of power can mean, age, size, strength, social status, sexuality, those sorts of things that are perceived to be, if you're different, the bully will use those to sort of attack another student or victim. So how do we recognize that it might be going on around us, right? So we all are aware of many things going on in the day. And as we said, especially with school bus drivers who this is aimed at, we understand that there's a lot of things going on, right? But and that you're asked to pay attention to a lot of the bus, and predominantly to get the kids home safely and to drive within the means. But things you will notice from students that are regular attendees on your bus, fear of going to school, riding the bus. They start to not be on as often, deliberately missing. And as a parent, your kids ask more often to not be on that bus. Kids will try and sit in different areas where they might feel safer or not as much of a target. You're going to see signs of, depression, kids being unusually, quiet. Obviously, school attendance is a key indicator, both from a school aspect and a home aspect. Kids are sick more often, or saying they're ill more often, and school performance starts to be affected by both attendance and by what's going on, right? And definitely unexplained injuries, kids that come home with bruises, or that aren't involved in sports, those sorts of things. Those are all indicators, and they may seem simple, but unfortunately, a lot of times, we don't notice, or we're so busy we don't notice. And then kids, again, it sort of festers. They feel they're not being noticed, which creates that sort of downward spiral for the victim. So as a driver, how do we know there may be signs of a bully on the bus? And again, some of these are very straightforward, but, obviously, you're going to have, if you witness kids picking on others, the name calling. And again, there's always that perception of kids will be kids. Well, it's true, but not when it gets to an aggressive or mean standpoint. We need to make sure we say something. And you're going to hear the term upstander a lot of times through this presentation. And what that means is, creating a culture where people are empowered to be an upstander or to say the right thing. And I think we can lead by example as bus drivers or administrators or school monitors, or any sort of extension of the school, right? Obviously on the bus, pushing, slapping, kicking, tripping, all those sorts of things. Step in and make sure people understand that it's not acceptable. And then, kids will often be very intimidated and try to change seats multiple times once the bus is being driven and underway. And from the bully standpoint, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to watch the driver and look to see when the driver is distracted, and try and get strategically back towards or closer to that child that they may be bullying, or the other victim. So it's something that we can notice for sure. And then the actual bully themselves, right? So the person that is sort of leading the intimidation or the, sort of unacceptable behavior, typically there's a lot of signs on why that person may or may not be acting that way, but they're quick to blame others, won't accept responsibility, need to be the best at everything. A lot of times someone that is a bully is often in trouble already with the school for various things. Typically always trying to be the center of attention and gain attention by that negative impact they're trying to have on others. So those are very key indicators, and again, very sort of straightforward. So what do we do? Well, how do we intervene, or how do we start to change the narrative and sort of the culture? So the number one thing I would say, prior to anything, is that we need to understand the policies, right? Before anybody does anything, you would want to make sure that all drivers have the the ability to understand the school policy, and how does it extend to the school bus environment, and understanding the sort of ramifications of that. Typically, the old saying of see something, say something, make sure it's reported, have maybe a reporting structure, some sort of sheet on the bus that the driver can make notes of, almost sort of a template that maybe if they want to report back to someone. Don't escalate, investigate. Typically that means, not confronting, but speaking with the children in the scenario, in an unthreatening way, treating them both with respect, but asking questions. Hey, I noticed something was going on. Did you want to have a quick discussion? Is there something you want to tell me? Can you tell me why this is going on? And sort of putting the onus back on the child to explain that might be initiating the negative behavior as well. And the bottom line is to keep everyone safe, right? If it really comes to it and you need to change seats with some students, et cetera, I mean, you would want to do that, but we want to make sure that there's, an understanding that you never put a child off the bus unless it's his or her residence, and it always falls within that school policy as well. And again, remembering that doing nothing is the wrong response again. So if you do notice something, you should start sort of the intervention. De-escalation. And again, that can mean a lot of things. And typically, I don't like the word because sometimes de-escalation means intervening in a fight. That's sort of the traditional answer. But de-escalation really is to me, it's a positive behavior that's used to distract from the negative, right? So, stay calm, sort of interact with people at a respectful level. If you need to lower yourself, sit on a seat to make direct eye contact to a student that might be younger, smaller, do that for sure. Don't stand in a sort of confrontational way with your hands in your pockets, and be very empathetic. Try and let the kids understand that you're trying to figure out exactly what is going on. And that's done typically by treating with respect, kindness, but definitely, again, with the school policy, understanding that if calling for help or getting back to dispatch is necessary as part of the protocol, to make sure that you do that as well, and that we're staying within those confines. So some of the other things that we can do, from the driver aspect is, drivers have a very unique opportunity, right? They're the first person and last person to see the students every day. So to me, there's a huge connection opportunity there to connect with our youth in a positive way and to lead by example, right? So typically knowing kids' names, having them understand they're part of your ride and the culture that's on that bus, and leading by example. Perhaps have rules for the bus posted on the bus, and maybe it extends as far as at the beginning of the year, a leaflet that goes home with the parents as part of the school package to understand, hey, these are the rules. The school, here's the bus, we have a no bullying aspect. These are safe zones, and create a positive environment on those buses and empower the kids to be part of that solution, right? Reward kindness instead of sort of challenging negativeness always. But it really always is leading by example, right? The expectations of how you want people to behave typically have to be led by the people that are sort of governing those rules. It doesn't work, that old scenario, if you're yelling or sit down, don't do this. You need to make sure they understand and say, hey, I thought we have already talked about this, and you do understand that this, and there's always a different way to sort of word it with the kids and to start that narrative. And I think just being positive and treating them as equals definitely is part of that. But I remember, riding the bus as a kid, and for me, and I'll jump into a little bit about me a little later on, but the unsafe zone for me was the bus stop. That's where the bullying happened to me. I was bullied as a student, and I couldn't wait for the bus to arrive because I felt a bit safer on there, because I knew there at least was an adult and it might have to stop. And so, the bus driver did know my name. He didn't intervene, but he knew my name. And I think it again, there's this perception that, adult supervision sometimes can be very helpful to the scenario. And we need to make sure that we make kids feel safe whenever we can. So talking about, upstanders, here's that word again, making sure that everyone on that bus understands they're part of the positive vibe, the good vibe, everything that's going on, the behaviors that are acceptable, the behaviors that are not. It's been proven that, more than half the time somebody stands up for a schoolmate or a person that is subject of negative behavior, it stops right away if someone calls it out. Unfortunately, it's not called out very often because most kids feel that they will become a target if they stand up to a bully or if they try and intervene. So, you know, we need to encourage kids to be part of the solution and to continue to do the right behaviors. And again, as I said earlier, positive behavior is more successful than punishing negative, right? So create a sort of a culture on your bus where, you can reward, almost sort of like a caught being kind scenario, and you call people out, or, as the student's leaving, say, hey, it was great to chat to you today. Nice job on such and such, and continuing that sort of narrative with kids, and then if you do suspect or maybe think that a child is a victim of bullying, then you want to be sure to engage that child too, and not maybe to pry really hard, but just to make sure you check in and talk to them, say, hey, how's it going? Is there anything we can do? And then understand possibly through the school any sort of extensions that you may have to do, where you may need to talk to staff, or what resources may be available. But definitely make the school aware if you think something serious is going on. And again, I would implore anyone that's on this call as a contractor or part of the school administration aspect that the drivers understand fully and are granted the ability to have that sort of education, to extend those school policies to the bus environment, because it's only going to help us in the long run. And really, again, they have a unique opportunity to connect with kids, and I think we really need to jump on that ability to have them have that education and the resources that are available. So unfortunately, there's things that do and don't work, and the number one is to not sort of lower yourself to the level of what may be going on. And this is a quick little video clip that went sort of viral for the wrong reasons. It's a quick example of sort of how not to react in a conflict resolution scenario. So I'm going to let this one play real quick here for you. So unfortunately, that's an exact example of what we shouldn't be doing. And you can see how quickly it escalates. And nowadays, it doesn't take long to go viral when the sort of correct protocol is not sort of followed. And, and I apologize if the sound's not coming through. I did get a note from someone saying they're not going to hear it. But, I would tell you that there's a ton of these videos, unfortunately, available online if you sort of type in, sort of bullying on buses, et cetera. But what this person didn't do was didn't treat them as an equal. You sort of got into that confrontational stance, and it quickly escalated, right? And the other kids, and you see the sort of mentality of when that happens, and that's really too bad, So what do we want to do to create a positive bus culture, right? So again, the drivers can, the number one I say is learn as many names as you can. But you want to make sure that the kids understand that they should stay seated, where they should stay seated. If you have new students that are maybe new to it or riding the bus for the first time, you might almost want to create an introductory peer group that they can sort of sit with and understand. And you might want to separate them from kids that you may suspect or have been issues in the past. And you want to try and start the experience as positively for them and their peers as you can. Knowing the kids' names sort of puts onus, right? And it's not always just empowering the kids, but again, it also, if someone is actually being a bully and they understand that, that they may understand that they might not be able to get away with it as often either. So knowing the name of the students is one of the best things that can be done. And again, as I would say, acknowledging positive behavior wherever there's an opportunity, right? So, create that culture where doing the right thing is the cool thing. Kindness is cool. You probably saw the opening screen, that's a tattoo I have on my arm. I live by it. I believe in that. Credence, my family was sort of always taught that way as well. But you can start by a very simple narrative there. Continuing on, kids have to understand the rules, right? So again, that school policy, there has to be an extension. We have to lead by it. We have to make sure we understand it and how it plays out for everything that we're involved in. And being courteous and consistent with the behaviors. Have alternatives, right? So make sure that the drivers themselves understand that if it's a scenario they want to get involved in, they have a place they can go, and that they can definitely have a resource that's available to take things to the next level, right? Being respectful and kind is, again, the key to everything, right? The school policy is the school policy, and again, it doesn't mean you have to yell it at a child or have to assume that every child understands it. But be consistent with the messaging and sort of the methodology behind what you're expecting as a culture, for sure. We were very early on in our inception. One of the first coloring contests we did, one of our very first winners was a school district out of Arizona, and it was amazing what they had done. Is they had got this they had taken our coloring contest almost viral within the school. They had implored the drivers to come on board. And the drivers actually made every kid that got on a bus color one of these pictures. And a lot of and it was our mascot, our kindness mascot at the time. And what was really cool was a lot of these bus drivers said how much it changed the conversation on their buses, because a lot of them, posted these pictures on the roof of their buses on the inside, and the kids all colored about kindness. And it was really neat. And it just created a whole discussion. But the drivers really became the sort of advocate. And at that school, we actually presented some anti-bullying medals to all the drivers, because they had done an amazing job. There was more than 20 of them that had stepped up and really spread this message to the kids and made sure they understood, how we should be acting on a bus. And it was an amazing thing. And again, the drivers just have this ability to connect with kids this way. So, what does work? So this is another video. And again, I apologize if the sound's not working. I'm going to try playing this again, and maybe Jessica, the organizer, can just ping me if it's not working. But this was an example of a gentleman who created a culture on his bus, became a huge advocate of the kids. And when they changed his route, they sort of took him on a sort of a tour of his prior route, with all the kids and the parents sort of thanking him for what they had done to be part of that. So hopefully you guys were able to hear that. That's sort of that's the shining example that we would hope that, many drivers can aspire to. And I'm sure it's going on daily and we don't see it. There's probably thousands of drivers doing amazing work with their students every day. But empowering them to do so and continuing to educate them and giving them the resources to do so, I think is huge. And this was a great example for the right reasons, as opposed to the prior video that we showed. So we talk a bit about, sort of technology, and obviously, I'm with our sort of technology entity, and we sell multiple products that go onto buses, from stop arms to cameras, et cetera. But, there are ways all these technologies can be used both to sort of help, maybe reduce bullying, but for sure investigate it after the fact, as an aid to sort of understand what went on. Having cameras on board typically will sometimes prevent folks from doing things if they do understand that they are possibly being recorded, but not always. But where that video becomes inherently important is to sort of go back and it becomes that objective witness. You might not always see what you want to see, but you sort of get an unbiased understanding of what may or may not happen. Part of our video solution also is, we have a driver event button, which is sort of a button that drivers could depress to tag video if there's something they think that the school or administrator should review based on something that might have been going on. And then obviously we sell some other products, in terms of fleet efficiency, routing, scheduling, automation of download of videos that may be associated to events. Those are all sort of part of that. They can help from the back end investigate. And I'm not going to get into any sales of it. I'm just talking about anything we can do on a bus to create a more positive environment, and then obviously assist in trying to sort of nullify and prevent the problem moving forward. From the camera aspect, this is just a quick snapshot, and really the point of this is to say, listen, we understand the drivers have a lot of things that they're responsible for at any given time. There's a lot of visual stimuli, and surprisingly enough, kids, don't sit still. There's kids moving seats, there's kids interacting with, sort of multiple groups here. So it's an understanding of, if the driver's not going to see it, the cameras can help capture it. If something, serious happens and it escalates to that sort of next level where it has to be investigated. In terms of an extension of that technology, I talked a bit about our diagnostic sort of panic button. We should probably change that name, but it's an event button. And really, the driver can depress that button if he wants to mark the video, and it makes it easily searchable for the school. It just basically puts a tag on the hard drive, and if they have Wi-Fi, that event would be downloaded automatically. If not, they would pull the drive, and they can search by event markers to see something quickly that they want to investigate, and send notifications internally to those involved. And it's something that could be added again to a pre-check or some of the driver training. So if that button was included as part of the solution they have on the bus, that could be implemented to a driver training that, hey, if they see something, say something, but also maybe depress that button so it's noted as well as part of the investigation or driver protocol. With video too, there's multiple things that, as video changes every year and we get into sort of HD and all the different things that can be done, we can blur in the video to protect the identity of folks. We can narrow in on sort of audio channels associated with certain cameras if the school doesn't have a protocol about recording audio that can grab a good perspective of what's going on as well. And again, we sort of call it that unbiased witness of what may be going on. So we sort of move into resources that are available now, and some of the things we can do for both the school, the drivers, and the folks on this call. Obviously, the great folks at the NSTA have put this together, this webinar for you, and many other learning opportunities for you guys, which I know our team's participated in as well in the past. So they're a great start. Safety first and foremost is sort of their protocol. NAPT, Peaceful School Bus, they both offer great comprehensive sort of PDF documentation that's already done with sort of template prevention scenarios and how to create climate positive culture on buses and within the school district. So there's tons of great resources that are out there. Again, you could go to our website, United to End Bullying extension, and we have blogs. Our team does an amazing job of posting positive stories and kids that are making a difference daily in the schools. With different kindness initiatives and stepping up and what some schools are doing. And then there's the NEA, National Education Association. They have numerous tools as well. Be Strong is an agency that we partner with that has a ton of resources and is sort of a student-run organization. Almost I'd implore you to also look into that. It's great. There's a lot of great initiatives they do as well. And they're actually just going to be moving their program into Canada this year as well. So again, tons of resources that are available, that sort of are free and readily, or someone's done a lot of the legwork, and really just it's about passing on the message and the materials that are available. And then from our aspect, from the Safe Fleet entity and SEON, which I'm part of, we do have our annual contest. We do a blog. We do newsletters. The coloring poster contest, which just ended. I have the unique pleasure of presenting a lot of those checks to some of those students. We were just with the school last week of 480 kids, where one of the students had won our coloring contest and a $500 check for the school. And it's really neat. The kids, it's amazing to see how empowering it is for them and some of the amazing ideas they come up with too. Our grant program just kicked off last week. So if you guys are interested in that, you can hop on our website and get the extensions for that. And how that works is, we basically have schools, student bodies, et cetera, create sort of scenarios and business cases for what they may do with money to continue to promote kindness, anti-bullying, and positive initiatives at their school. And then we have a panel of judges that awards a lot of those grants. And then we again give grants of differing amounts, but we give away about $50,000 a year now, which is just fantastic. In our coloring contest, we usually get over 3,000 entries a year, different schools, and they'll hold internal contests and then only send in, one or two of the kids that they thought were the best in their school. So there's a lot of sort of neat extensions of this initiative that has been really, really great to see. And I just believe that, we can all do our part a little bit each day. It does take a village, as they say. Unfortunately, part of what we have to do is understand that everyone has to be on the same page, right? The messaging has to be consistent. Everybody has ownership in it, from parents to teachers to community to drivers to monitors to school aides. Everybody has to understand the policy, and everybody has to sort of try and create that positive behavior culture. And you know what? Unfortunately, it doesn't all work in sync. And let's be real, everybody can miss something, or there can be an opportunity or a gap or a room for improvement for sure. But what I would say is if we could each do our part each day to make sure we understand the scenarios and to make sure that we're trying to lead by example, that's really, really what it takes. Inclusion, kindness, respect, those are sort of behaviors that we should be leading by and can start to create that culture. So lastly, just getting a bit of why am I giving this presentation? It's not by any means that, I'm anyone special. I really just have been involved in this initiative since inception. It means a lot to me. As I mentioned earlier, I was bullied as a child. I had 1 year of school that I would love to forget. But really what my scenario was, I would show up at the bus stop, and I had my particular bully each morning would either, push me down on the ground, take my lunch, throw it in the garbage, et cetera, call me names in front of the other kids. And, this went on for a long time, so much so that some days I would do some of those techniques that we said we should be watching for. I'd try and take a different bus or walk, a mile out of my way to go to a different bus stop, those sort of things. And, how it changed for me was one simple act of kindness, which is really what this is all about, right? Being kind and trying to change the narrative. And one day when I got on the bus, unbeknownst to me, there had been another student who had sort of witnessed this go on for a while. I was not friends, with this particular student at the time. And, they had understood that this bully was sort of taking my lunch away each day and throwing it in the garbage, et cetera. And what happened was I was walking down the aisle of the bus, and this kid said, "Hey, you want to sit with me?" And so I did. I didn't know the child, and I just sat down. And, unbeknownst to me, this student said, "Hey, I've got you covered." And I didn't know what they meant. But when he opened his knapsack, he had brought an extra lunch. And that really just changed my sort of world, my perspective, because then I thought, okay, someone does realize what's going on. And in my mind, I actually thought, well, I've got the bully beat because I don't care what he does anymore because someone else is helping me out here. And it sort of became a game to me. I used it as a sort of a positive tool. I started just to bring items from the fridge that I knew my mom would want cleaned out and thrown away. So I put those in a bag and let the bully throw it away every day, and sort of hid my real lunch somewhere else in my backpack, or just found a way around it. So one act of simple kindness can sort of change the narrative or the perspective for kids. And, I would say that, it all starts with being kind, right? I mean, we can talk about all sorts of procedure, protocol, policy, but you have to lead by example. And I would implore that, and I would make sure that, anyone that works under the school sort of umbrella understands the policies, and that is the culture we're trying to create out there and make a difference. And I was always taught that, today you have an opportunity to change someone's tomorrow. And I think it's a great quote. It's something that my dad told me, is you always have an opportunity to change someone's tomorrow by doing something as simple as saying thank you or hello. And it really is where we are nowadays. And it can have a huge impact on someone's life that you don't know if they don't think they're being noticed. And that's really what's happening typically to a bullying victim is they don't. So that sort of wraps up the basis of what we've done. There's going to be a handout that's available. There's going to be some resources. I think we're going to flip it back over to Jessica to see if there's sort of any questions that people want to discuss.
Yeah.
All here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Mike, thank you so much. I'm opening up the lines here so that you're all unmuted. You're free to speak. Please speak freely, ask questions. We have some time here to ask some more questions about what Mike shared with us today. So please raise a hand or ask a question if you have any. I believe everybody's unmuted here. And while we're waiting for that, I do apologize for the issues we've had with the volume, but rest assured, we'll make sure you guys get those links. Like Mike mentioned, there's plenty of examples, but when we send our follow-up email here with the handouts, we'll be sure to include those links as well.
I do have a question, Mike. This is Peggy. You noted there's technology that can be used on the actual bus itself. Do you have any suggestions for any kid-friendly apps that we might be able to encourage deferring energy to, or suggesting?
Yeah. So in terms of apps, I know that if you go to our one of our links through Be Strong, you can find some links of resources that are available. There are some really neat apps that have been sort of created by other kids, and some kids have actually won awards that are sort of those safe space type scenarios where if a child feels alone, they can click on this app. I know there was one that one of the girls, and the name is sort of slipping past me right now, but she was actually on like Ellen and a lot of the talk shows. She created an app that where, if kids were feeling alienated at their school, et cetera, they could log onto this app right away to talk to someone almost in real time. It was almost like a buddy app. So I don't know the names of them, but yes, those resources, Peggy, are definitely out there for sure.
Great. Thank you.
Mike, I have a question. When you were showing the video about the best bus driver, what are some of the examples of how bus drivers can create a more positive environment for the students?
Yeah, well, and so in that scenario, I mean, that driver did an amazing job of sort of going really out of his way to make sure he understood the name of every student that he dealt with daily. He actually extended it so much so that, he knew a lot of the parents. He just engaged those kids daily. Knew a little bit of tidbits about each one, and just he sort of that old repetitive messaging. He talked a lot about that the bus was his number one key word was safety. He kept having the kids repeat safety first. Talked about they understood all the sort of safety protocol for the bus, but understanding the behaviors that were acceptable. So he sort of took it to the next level, and we know that not everyone can always do that. But definitely some of the very simple things were the names. I mean, he high-fived the kids when they got on the bus. He asked them how their day was. He sort of just engaged and made it sort of a personal journey for them. And I think a lot of those kids, as it came out in that video, looked forward to their ride to and from school. Whereas, unfortunately, in some scenarios, there's some kids that just don't even want anything to do with the bus based on their scenario. So I think it's just trying to change that and making it almost this, I know it sounds funny, but this awareness too, right? Everyone's aware of each other on that bus. And I think that's really what he had sort of empowered those kids.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to ask one more question, Mike, if that's okay. Only because you had touched on the grant program, and I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit more. I know that you had given certain examples, but can you share some of the ideas that students have actually done with that grant money that was given to the school?
Yeah, we've seen some really excellent ideas that have come out of that. I mean, I've visited schools where they've created this kindness confetti that, kids they have a star of the week where they sort of empower kids, come up in front of the school and call out some acts of kindness. We've seen where kids have created kindness slogans or anti-bullying slogans that they put on T-shirts that they sell through the student body. We just did a presentation within the last month of a school where they are building these kindness benches, and so they, with their grant money, they sort of got involved internally with the woodwork teacher at the school. We actually had a tour of their woodwork shop when we were there and awarded them the grant money, and they're going to create these wood benches, and they're going to engrave like sort of kindness and positive messaging on all these benches and put them sort of in strategic locations in the school for kids to sit on. So it's things like that where they're really just trying to pass on that continued message. So it's been really great. I mean, it's neat to see these kids, and in the school that we actually were just at, they actually had 3 different sort of leadership groups that brought messaging from, you know, sort of their segment of the school, and then the school voted on what they wanted to pass forward first. But, you know, one of the other ones was they wanted to have this massive kindness banner painted on the outside of the school. That was one of the ideas. And they let the students vote on what they thought was the best. But, I mean, there's just so many different neat ideas we see every year. And I tell you that I'm not involved with the judging. You know, we have sort of a group that does that. And I know it gets tougher every year because it's hard to not give something to everyone, because it's great, you know, the awareness and sort of some of the imagination that goes into some of the ideas they come up with as well.
Yeah. The transportation department, can you hear me, Jessica? Right?
I think the question was, can the transportation department participate in this grant program? Did I get that right?
I believe so. Teresa, if you're still on, maybe Teresa sort of handles the logistics of that. Teresa, if you're still there, maybe you can just jump on to who can participate in the program.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, it is open to the transportation department, and we've had quite a few WIN grants in the past. For example, one of the programs that they ran was Mike mentioned Caught Being Kind. So what they did was the school bus drivers, they voted for the student on the bus that was the kindest that week, and the students voted for the bus drivers. And then they got enough votes I believe it was every month, and they ran a prize and an award for the best, the bus driver that was the kindest, and the student that did the most kind action. And it really encouraged everybody to kind of catch each other being kind as you would, and focusing on wanting to help each other, and it made a big change in the culture at that school.
So Teresa, I think we got we got a little bit of that, but you know what? In that nice handy email that we're going to send everyone afterwards, we'll recap that one as well, because I think what Teresa is trying to share and communicate, that indeed the transportation, it can be a part of this program as well. So we'll make sure we provide that as a recap.
Yeah, I apologize if anybody didn't hear that, but in that particular scenario where transportation department did get involved, what happened there was they sort of created a contest where they had these Caught Being Kind stickers where students sort of, you know, would call out acts of kindness with their peers, and then people that got the most votes for being kind that week, and then they extended it to drivers, and they sort of made these sort of peer champions in both groups and empowered people to continue just to be as kind as possible and to sort of identify those acts within that school. So yes, I think anybody, you can jump on there and see who can be involved. And you know, as much as we can spread this message, we like as many people to be involved as we can.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you, Mike and Teresa, for taking the time to present on this topic. The information you shared today certainly shows how we all have a role to play in protecting our youth when it comes to bullying prevention and just, you know, being kind. And all that to say, it's people like you that have this passion to help spread the much needed awareness through our communities. And for that, I want to say thank you. After this webinar, you will be presented with a brief survey. We ask that you take a minute to leave us some of your feedback. Our feedback is very important. It ensures our sessions are useful and they continue to hold value. I have 2 quick announcements, and then hopefully we'll get you all out the door here on time. Our next Flash webinar is scheduled for February 19th 1 p.m. Electric Bus Conversation, which is hosted by Lion Electric. Join us for a conversation about the advantages of owning and operating an electric school bus. Hear firsthand from contractors that have made the switch to electric, as well as experts from our newest original equipment manufacturer, Lion Electric. As we usually do, registration's available through our newsletter, on a Facebook page, and via email reminders as we approach the webinar date. Last, our annual bus-in has been scheduled and dates are set for April 30th to May 2nd. May 1st being the day we're on the Hill. We'll be staying at the Key Bridge Marriott, and in fact, I believe registration's due to launch today. So please be on the lookout for that event invitation to hit your inbox. If you've never attended the bus-in, I encourage you to consider joining us this year. It really is a unique opportunity where you get to join your peers and together open necessary dialogue with our legislators. The Government Relations Committee, along with our lobbyist Prime Policy Group, do a wonderful job of getting the association to decide on a topic for the Hill, and then they work hard to ensure our members feel prepared to speak on that topic with legislators. So we hope you can join us for the next webinar and at the bus-in, and thank you again for attending today's webinar. Take care and have a nice day.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.